Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Investing in Huntsville.
Investing.
And for the last 45 minutes, I've just been trying to get the cameras right. We really need a roadie.
Yeah, it was really trying to get the powder on my face.
You know, I had to call makeup in on Zach like 4 times. Makeup! So, how the heck are you, buddy?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm just curious, is a red light supposed to be on?
It's over here, what I'm using. I got this little whiz-bang camera
you're
thing
good.
here.
I'm
and now look, when I switch to you, the little red light comes
there it
on.
is.
So it switches back and forth.
Lots of great stuff going on. Lots of amazing things. Got vacation going on with the kids. They're coming.
It's just they're emptying the dumpster out back, and
That's
it's right on the other side of the wall. So you got spring break week. Where are you guys going?
We're going to Tennessee, up
Yeah?
in the mountains, Pigeon Forge, Smearville, I think is how you say
Sevierville.
it. Sevierville. There you go.
Sevierville.
Sevierville.
You going to Dollywood?
I'm sure we will. The kids love the roller coasters. I'm still trying to get them to get on the Eagle. My daughter's ready. My son, he's still nervous.
I am not a big fan of roller coasters.
Oh, I love them. I can ride them frontwards, backwards, upside downs. I love them.
My youngest daughter, Sierra, loves them, even when she was little. But we would go to like Disney World 3 or 4 times a year, and we'd always have to take her cousin to ride the roller coasters because Daddy ain't getting on it.
Oh, really?
And Mama sure ain't.
Well, I don't go to Disney World.
No, well, maybe you should because
I went once.
Where is it? Universal Studios.
Now that I would go to.
And that's more of a theme park than Disney World's kind of. You know,
it's overrated.
Well, it really is, and it's very expensive now. So
I'm just happy my kids like Dolly World.
Dolly World
Because it's clean and it's nice.
Yeah,
and
do you
there's
remember?
no lines.
Remember Opryland?
Oh, of course.
Were you here when Opryland was open?
Yeah.
Used to be a little theme park in Nashville.
Yep.
I remember going to that as a kid and seeing Hank Snow. Do you know who Hank Snow was?
I don't.
Hank Snow was an old country Grand Ole Opry singer. This was back 50 years ago. And his claim to fame was he had the worst toupee in country music.
Well, there you go.
I got to see him in person. It was
Maybe I should get a
highlight of
toupee.
my sad youth. So anyway, hey, enough babbling. Welcome to the show where we talk about real estate investing, sometimes investing in general. We're going to talk a little bit about some banks today.
Well, let's be clear. I mean, what we talk about, whether that you do it in Huntsville or anywhere, it's the same principles.
Well, it really is. We just happen to be here.
Yeah.
But got a really great investor market here. But we've talked about a lot of things so far. I think this is number 5. We talked about why you should think about investing here. Markets. We talked about money. Today we're going to talk about the team.
I think team is one of the major foundational pieces before you run out and start looking at properties.
Okay, before we do that, let's talk a little bit about what's going on with the banks out to the west, because I know you're much more of a financial guy than I am. You check up on stuff and keep up. What are your thoughts with what's going on?
I feel like money is a big part of real estate.
You think?
So I am definitely keeping up with like where the bond markets are, where the treasuries are at, what are the indexes, what's our primes, what's the lenders doing, like what are they lending on, what are they not lending on. I mean, that's something that I do stay on top of pretty regularly. And I know, as the president of the REIA, I've been getting a lot of emails myself about the 3-4 banks now that are going under. And so I don't want people to be nervous or scared, because I think you have to understand you're really comparing apples to oranges here, right? Because, those types of banks are much different than our local banks. And you'll hear me always say, go local, go local. And there's some reasons that I say go local. One is because of the diversification of the assets that they go after. Like the banks, if you take the bank, I think it's SVP or something like that.
Silicon Valley Bank.
Silicon Valley
Bank.
Bank,
Signature
SVB.
Bank.
If you take them for an example, they were a high risk bank. And the reason that the FDIC had to step in and start taking over and managing and liquidating, or forcing them to liquidate assets, was because some of their big depositors pulled out, and therefore they didn't have enough, because banks like that only keep about 30% liquidity.
Right.
And they invest the other 70. The downside is the Silicon Valley Bank was invested into long-term maturity type bonds, which means it's there, but they can't touch it.
Right, these are government bonds.
It's
Money's tied up.
$60 billion they had invested. So now they're being forced to take it back out. Well, the downside is they're going to have to pay $2 billion in fees. and they got to wait till someone will buy it. Well, on a fire sale, no one's paying them face value. So long story short, that's an orange. Our local banks are
an ugly orange.
It's a very ugly orange right now, but our local banks are oranges, right? So I was just talking to a vice president yesterday, and their game is completely different. They literally only put about 20 to 25% into investing like assets of like bond market, mutual funds, things like that. That means the other 75% is liquidity and mortgages. So it's a completely different, you follow what I'm saying? Like it's completely different. I think people need to understand that. And it's not like they're hearing the news, all these big companies, Roku, Roblox, all these companies. The money's there. They're just being forced now to liquidate to come back and pay their depositors back. Where our local model, our local banks, we don't have that problem.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people think banks just take all the cash and keep it in a big vault.
No.
And it just sits there. Remember on the Beverly Hillbillies? Every time Uncle Jed or Granny would get ticked at Mr. Drysdale, they would threaten to pull their money out of the Commerce Bank. Yeah. And he's like, well, your money's not here. And they're like, well, where is it? Why isn't our? And so a lot of people think that the money just sits there, but in truth, the banks, they have to invest in something to get even a meager interest rate back.
Very true.
And so they do these government bonds, and when they lock them in, it's my understanding they are locked in at a certain percentage rate, but then if the bonds start offering a higher percentage rate, suddenly those are underwater. So they're not going to be able to liquidate
inflation
them
is
quick.
what it's done. Or the rise in interest rate, it really is what killed Silicon Bank. But just to be clear, there's different investments banks do. What Silicon did is they went for the high return, but the problem was they had to lock it in for maturity, which meant they had to ride for 5 to 10 years.
Right.
So that's why they're getting penalized. Where our local banks, they don't do those types of investments. They're in stuff they could literally turn around and sell tomorrow if they needed to liquidate. Yeah. So it's just, and that's why I keep saying it's apples and oranges.
Yeah, but this was kind of an unnecessary run, though. Yeah, because the bank was really in no trouble until depositors started coming to try to get their money out, and that's what crashed it.
A large bank, a large depositor moved from that bank to another bank, and they weren't prepared.
Took their cash.
Yeah.
A lot of the tech companies, like Roku, had 287 million, something like in there. Now they're lucky because the government is stepping in and saying, okay, we're going to make good on all deposits, not just up to the $250K FDIC limit.
And they can do that only because Silicon Valley does have $60 billion in these investments that they're making them pay the penalty to liquidate it.
Yeah. And so they're going to hopefully make everybody whole, but that's not really going to affect us here. And
not at all.
It's not really going to affect the mortgage market or any of that stuff here.
No, I think it'll affect interest rates. I've heard from three banks already that the Fed is halting the raise on the next meeting.
I've heard that too,
because of what's going on right now, which could be good for us. Yeah. Another good thing in the media right now, if people, and I posted this on our group page, is the housing start bill that's being put out by Cooney, which is they're trying to get an approval of a bill, and it's bipartisan, so both sides are on this, is that they're trying to create a $500 million fund to go back into affordable housing, like to help the VAs get more funding to buy houses. They're also putting more money into the Section 8 department, where they're trying to say, and which we have known this for years as landlords, that the vouchers that VAs approve for Section 8 are low based on where rents are. So they're forcing the VA or the Section 8 now to go to wider to increase all their vouchers, which will help landlords, by the way. And then they're also doing something that's really amazing, is they're trying to pass the bill now to stop all the delays for the housing, the HUD and Section 8 on the inspections. Because it's such a delay on those that they're wanting to speed that up. And if you had it inspected last year, that you don't have to have it re-inspected.
Yeah, and quickly explain HUD and Section 8. Define those terms.
Urban housing development, which is Section 8, is just it's a program that allows people with low income, low situations, as in financial situations, to be able to go to the government and get subsidized or help to pay their rent. And they don't just give them money, so they give them a voucher, or if you're the landlord, they actually give it to you. And for years, as rents have gone up, the vouchers have always been low, so the actual person has had to come in with extra money to meet market rents. And so
Okay. All right. So let's talk about the team.
Yeah.
Because you and I talk about this a lot because it's so hard to build a team in some situations. But let's just start from ground zero.
Yep.
Who are your team members? How do you go about locating, recruiting, building those relationships?
Well, look, real estate investing is a team sport, not an I sport.
Right. There's no I in team. Yeah.
I can tell you real quick, you can be the dullest tool in the shed and have a great team and still make it, right? And so it really determines, what are you going to do? Like, if you're going to go after rehabbing, if you're going to go after renting houses, or you're going to go after commercial or industrial, they all kind of are... The teams around them are all similar but different, right? Mm-hmm. Like, if I buy a commercial, I buy warehouses, industrial, I need a specific type of broker that knows that world, you know what I mean?
Right.
And can get in there. Where, like, if you're going to be in the rehabbing business, you need an agent or a broker too. If you're going to be in the rental business, you need an agent or a broker too, right? And the reason that is because they become an ally for you to make sure you're safe, the contracts are written correctly, they handle a lot of the negotiations for you. On the rehabbing, they handle the resale. That's the agent. Everybody always says, oh, I already have an agent. Well, look, let's talk about this.
do you have an agent suited to what you want to do?
That's right. Or in some cases, I try to explain to people, like, you definitely need a primary agent. The agent that you work with all the time, that runs the searches for you on the MLS, that, you guys are business together. It's a partnership, really. But you also need every agent in the market knowing who you are.
Right.
And I'm a big believer that just because you say, oh, well, I've been with this agent for 10 years, that's great. But how many other agents know you? Well, I don't talk to any other agents. Well, you're not dating them.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're just trying to let them know what you do. Because your agent would appreciate it if they brought you one and you bought it, you fixed it up, and you gave it back to your agent to go sell it. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm always telling people, contact 200 agents. If you have a primary agent, that's great. But that's the agent side of things.
Can we stop there? I'm an agent.
I know you are.
So I want to kind of unpack that a little bit. Your agent, your real estate agent, is a member of your team.
100%.
He's not your gopher.
No.
He's not your dog.
No.
I have talked to some investors that, okay, now here's my box. I'm buying at 50 cents on the dollar. I want you to send me a list of everything in the MLS. Get ready to make a lot of offers. We're going to make a lot of offers. And I'm like, not me, Bubby. Yeah. I'm not going to do it. Some agents do that. But in this business, it's a small town. And if you, as a real estate agent, get the reputation of being the low ball investment guy, nobody's going to call you with deals. Nobody's going to want to work with you.
Right.
And I refused to do it. Yeah. Even when I was starting out, when I was really hungry, you were my first investor, but you knew what you were doing. Right?
Well, yeah, but I don't I don't say pull 100 properties and let's make.
But there are those investors who do.
Yeah.
And I know that because even now, out of 100 agents, I probably got a dozen or so that work with investors.
Yeah.
And they're always coming to me with this tale. Okay, I talked to this investor. Here's what he wants me to do. And, that's great if you want to put in the time and effort to do that. But what I'm saying is, I think for a long-term relationship, investors need to keep in mind, and the agents need to keep in mind, that they're really working together.
Oh, 100%.
And that's the point I wanted to make.
Well, and here's the other thing. Your agent can give you a good reputation in the market.
Correct.
And you can give your agent a good reputation in the market.
Yeah. And
then people start saying, hey, look, Tim, he's the guy to go through. He's got real investors.
Yeah. And case in point, I've got my main investor is a guy out of California who has bought, 50.
2 of my houses.
2 of your houses, which is still trying to sell on them damn things. I think he's bought like at least 50 properties here in the last 2-3 years. He's got 33 Airbnbs here.
Wow.
And because he's not one of those nickel and dime investors, he'll pay a fair price. Yeah. He wants a deal, but he wants it. Every day I have real estate agents in this town calling me saying, hey, do you think your guy would be interested in this?
Yeah.
And if my guy isn't, then I've got my investor team that might have clients that are.
Right.
So the point is, and a lot of, and I don't know, how you teach it, but a lot of these coaches, that's their method.
Yeah.
Get in, hammer, get ready to put out 100 offers today.
Well, there are a lot that do that.
Yeah. And it works, I guess.
I'm more on, and you can ask any of my coaching students, I'm more about teaching them the value of a long-term model.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, look, this business will become more successful for you the longer you're in it and the longer you build these relationships. I also teach a very simple method that says, look, if the homeowner wants $200,000, your agent sent you the deal, and we run our numbers and we can't pay but $100,000, there's no way we're going to get that deal.
Right.
It's too far of a
Right.
spread.
Yeah.
But if they want 100 and we run our numbers and we're at 180, okay, let's
Yeah.
go talk.
Yeah.
Right. We might be able to find a happy medium in there. So,
well, the other side of that is you want an agent who's creative.
Yes.
And not afraid to make those offers.
Very true.
Okay. I'm not afraid to go out and make a 50 cent on the dollar offer if it makes sense.
If you can justify it.
Yeah. And sometimes
justify
you can't.
Oh, yeah.
So
you can.
don't just, you don't want an agent who's just an order taker.
No, there's so much fine line to what we're talking
Yeah,
about here,
there is.
right? And it's really cool because we're on both sides of it, right? And so, and I love that. But I'm always telling people this: be very clear. You will get ghosted by an agent quickly if you come in with this big idea. You're going to swing for the fences, and you don't have your money together, you don't have your team together, you don't have your understanding together, and you can't pull, because they're going to take and they're going to go, and they start bringing you 3-4 deals at once, and you can't execute. You just burnt that.
They're going to go
bridge.
somewhere else.
They're going to
Yeah.
go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so it's really like a fine line. But there again, I'm also telling people, look, when you call an agent, you're just letting them know. If I call 400 agents, I'm not telling all 4 of them, hey, run me searches on the MLS. I already got somebody that does that.
Right.
What I'm saying to them is simply this. Hey, if you get a property and it's distressed, a first-time home buyer probably is not interested in it, and you need a cash buyer, call me.
Yeah.
Just give me a call. And I had one in South Huntsville. She said, hey, we're going to list this in 4 days. I'm like, great, give me till tomorrow. I'll let you know what I'm going to do. You got to have that kind of speed with some agents, because they will call you. But look, they have a fiduciary responsibility to get it listed.
Right.
But they might call you and say, hey, I'm listing it. If you want to come look at it, let me know.
Yeah. And that's the kind of relationship you got to build.
It is.
All right. So team member number 1, real estate agent.
Obviously, the second part of your team is your funding, which we talked about
Last week.
Last week.
Seems like yesterday.
Outside of that, we got to get into the granular side of things.
Okay.
So now we've got to start finding what's known as contractors, licensed contractors, which is going to be one of the hardest things that you do.
Yeah.
Because we're always going through them, trying to find the right ones. But don't let that discourage you. Just keep talking and looking, and ask for referrals. That's the biggest thing I can tell you, is finding out who they've done business with, talk to who they've done business with. And the reason we need a licensed contractor is because when we get into rehabs, there's permits that have to be pulled. If there's big jobs that have to be done, you don't want some handyman going in and ripping electrical out and moving walls.
No, you don't.
The second thing you need is a good handyman.
Yeah.
And the reason that you need a good handyman is because, let's say you're buying a rental property and you don't really need to do a lot. You just need to paint some walls, maybe have a carpet company and do some carpet, change out some doorknobs, pressure wash, just clean it up. That's a handyman all day long, not a contractor.
Yeah.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because contractors can be the bane of our existence.
100%.
I mean, finding a good contractor is like finding Bigfoot. You've heard they're out there, but you ain't seen one lately.
Well, and in my experience with how much volume we run through, is they'll see us and want to come work for us. And like the first 2, 3, 4 jobs, man, you're like, I found the golden egg, And then it's like,
and they get comfortable.
Boom. And like, I've got one right now. It's been with me for 4 years, and I started noticing like the pricing wasn't right. And I hadn't checked his pricing in a while because he'd been with me so long. He quoted me on a floor job $7 a square foot. He didn't say 7, he just gave me the number. And I went and did the math. It was $7. Where I went and got 2 other quotes, and they were 4 and 4.5.
Right.
And I went back to him. I'm like, man, how long you been creeping prices up on me?
Yeah. What did he say?
He was like, oh, not me.
No, not me.
Not me. I'm like,
Yeah.
So this is something that you do. And I always say when you buy rehabs, everybody says, and I'm going to disagree with them, but they always say you make money when you buy. And I say, no, you don't. You estimate the money you're going to buy. You make the money in managing the project.
Boy, that's true.
Right?
Yeah. Yep.
And that has to do with always checking even the contractors and handyman you have, because you'll get comfortable with them. And as soon as they know you're comfortable, they'll start raising prices on you. And you got to be aware of that.
Yeah. And it's the same kind of thing with an agent. You try to build a partnership, relationship with these people, with these contractors. Yep. But yeah, I mean, you know my stories with good old boys with pickup trucks and pulling permits and not. But
well, and here's the other reason you need a good handyman. And just remember, a contractor is a licensed contractor. So you can understand most contractors you're going to pay about 20% more.
Yeah, and you're not talking business license. You're talking about licensed by the state.
GC, general contractor license, right? And you're basically hiring them to then manage all of the subs, pull your permits, and be your project manager. And that's why you're paying them typically 20% more than what the job would cost if you self-managed it, right? A handyman is just paid by the hour or paid by the job.
Right.
But they're very important, and you need them also because, for example, when you go to sell a house, what always comes back?
Repairs, yeah.
RFRs, right?
Yeah.
Requests for repairs. And so you need them to go out and fix that. I'll just give a shout out to a guy that's did an amazing job for me in his reporting. And when he was done, Tim, he sent his follow-up report with like what was on the inspection call out and then how he fixed it. And he had side befores and afters of everything.
Who's that?
Rent a Husband Now.
Jeremy Malden. He's the best, man.
Golly, what a professional guy.
Yeah. And Jeremy used to be one of my agents.
Yes.
And then he started that business. And the reason he started, I think Emily, his wife, she does a lot of investing.
Yep.
And they couldn't find anybody to do quality work. So, yeah, they do. Jeremy does a great job.
Oh, I sent it to the agent, and the agent called me and was like, who did this? I was like, Rent a Husband Now. And she was like, oh, I'm calling him. Yeah. Because it's such a like, oh, I did the job. Well, did you do the job? Yeah. And he knows what they're looking for. So anyways, back to the point.
Okay.
Agents, funders, contractors, handyman, you've got to get a good closing attorney.
Okay.
And I don't mean like any closing attorney. You need a closing attorney that understands investing. And let me explain why. Because we think closing attorney, all of them can do it. But in some cases as investors, we get some really unique deals.
Wonky stuff.
Yes, like we're buying foreclosures and we've got 3 days before the auction comes and when they've got to step in and stop that. We get sometimes like the deal that I'm doing where we've negotiated the seller to carry back a mortgage and, and they've got to be able to come in and do that. And sometimes we have short time frames and sometimes we don't. And so the title company or escrow office you work with needs to be able to have some experience working with investors on a regular basis.
Right. And yeah, we have our own title company now.
Yeah.
And we specialize in that because you can get into some really unique situations.
Very much.
And the way that the reason I ended up partnering with this particular attorney to launch Keystone Title was he had gone above and beyond for me. I can't tell you how many times.
That's perfect.
He did things he didn't have to do.
I'm with you.
He did so much stuff. He's my real estate lawyer now.
Yes.
And so some of them are just checking boxes and dotting I's and crossing T's.
And they're not all right.
And they're not all alike. I mean, honestly, I'm not going to name names, but we've dealt with some title companies that were just the worst.
Yeah.
Just the worst.
Well,
so developing that relationship with a good one is important.
And you'll know. And if you're new, you won't know.
Exactly.
But you'll find out real quick.
You will.
So, for example, like I've been with the same title company forever. I love them. I was texting them last night at 9:30 at night. Like that's what I love about working with who I work with. But we've got one we're closing right now in a property in Huntsville. A new title company, never dealt with them before. It's the worst experience ever. Like I'm doing a private loan on it for the investor. They were supposed to close a week ago. Never closed. Then they were supposed to close Friday. Never closed. Never sent me a copy of my mortgage, my note, or the wiring instructions. Then Monday rolls around, and they're like, "Hey, are we closing?" I'm like, "I haven't got nothing from the title company." Yeah. So I reached back, and they're like, "Oh, we didn't know that wasn't sent." I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
So they're not all the same.
They're not all the same. They don't all charge the same.
They do not.
But
and title insurance. Let me just put this out there. Don't skimp on title insurance.
Yes, never.
Just buy it. Just every single time buy title insurance. It'll help you in the long run. I had one in Scottsboro that there was some issue with some land lines and a little half of a lot. We went to sell it. It popped up. Well, I had title insurance. So I was like, cool. Hey, guys, go solve this problem.
Yeah. I worked with the title company once. I did not choose them. And I had some questions about things, about the deed. And the title attorney actually said, well, that's what they make title insurance for.
Yeah.
I'm like, you not too concerned with rectifying it? Nah, it'll be, if it comes back, you covered.
They'll cover it.
So, yeah.
And it's very true. I've been down that road a few times. Not a lot, just a few. But I was shocked. I was like, well, there you go. So that's your title and your closing. Now, when you move out of that, you got to start getting into some of your special tradespeople, like a home inspector. Mm-hmm. Got to get a home inspector on there, because this is not HGTV when we're flipping houses. Listen, just what you see inside the property is what you see that has to be fixed, but you don't know what's in the attic, what's in the crawl space, like what the electrical's like, the plumbing's like. So you need a good inspector. And I'll even say you need multiple inspectors, because sometimes they're 2 weeks out and you got to inspect it earlier. And then not in that, you also need an appraiser on your team. And people always say to me, well, Zach, why would you get an appraiser? Isn't that for the buyer that's buying your property? Well, no, it's twofolds. One, let me go back real quick to the inspector.
Okay.
So we always, on flips, we will order 2 inspections. And this is a gold nugget for you guys. So we order the first inspection, right? Because then we go through with the contractor and all the cosmetic stuff. Hey, this is the color I want, blah, blah, blah. But then we get the inspection and hand that to the contractor and say, hey, here's all the safety issues we got to fix too. Mm-hmm. And then we do with our home inspector, we say, look, we're going to also have you come back for a comeback inspection. And they typically charge $75 to $100 for that. But the reason that we do that is we never pay the last draw until that inspect comes in and goes in the attic under the crawl space and make sure all the things that were supposed to get done gotten done, because I got burnt on that years ago and said, I'll never do that again. Yeah. So that's on the inspector side. So just run your budget. We run anywhere from, we put about a $1,200 budget for inspections and appraisals. Now let's go over to the appraisal. So why is the appraisal important when you're buying it to fix it or rent it? Well, it's twofolds. One, if I've got a property that I know the value is amazing, and I'm trying to create a little bit of a bid war on the property, I'll go get it appraised. And if let's say it appraises for, I don't know, $350,000. Well, I'll take that appraisal and lay it on the counter in the kitchen, and I'll have my agent, I'll say, Tim, list this for $335,000. And so when they're coming in, they're going, whoa, it's listed below the appraisal amount, which then ultimately creates what?
A bidding war.
That's right.
We haven't had one in a couple of weeks.
So, and then I also will do it on a rental. And the reason that we do the appraisal with our appraiser on a rental is if our strategy is the BRRRR. If we're having a hard time, like really figuring out what the value is so that I know once I buy it and refinance out what my cash left in the deal is going to look like, then I'll order an appraisal and say, hey, let's just appraise this. And you got to get an appraiser that understands like future value. Right. Because then they'll come back and say, what all are you going to do to it? And we'll say, here's everything I'm going to do to it. And then they'll take a future value on it and say, here's what I think it'll be worth when you're done. Yeah.
Let me also say this. Just like lenders and title people, not all inspectors are alike.
And not all appraisers.
Not all appraisers are like. So you want to make sure you're working with somebody that knows what you're doing, knows what they're doing. Yep. You know, like I've got a good one that does all the investment properties.
That's great.
And he knows, we're not really kind of generating a repair request on the first inspection. I just want to know what's wrong with this house.
Right.
So it helps me get my budget together as far as what we're going to have to put into the home. Yep. But doing like retail real estate, it's a big difference, because the point there is if I'm representing a buyer, I want to know what's wrong with the house so we can then go back and ask for repairs.
Yes.
So it's kind of two different worlds. You need to make sure you've got an inspector that can operate in both.
Well, and that's a good point, because like the inspectors that I like to use are a lot of times they understand our investing world, but they do a lot of inspections for like banks and first-time home buyers, because what I'm always looking for is, what is that buyer gonna find? Let's just fix it now. Right? Like, let's just get it fixed now so that it's my RFR is real short. Right. But anyways, that gets us through there. Now, there's so many people you need on your team, but another primary one is a property management company. And look, not all property management companies are the same.
Not all of them, right?
Some will not manage what we classify as low income housing. Some will only manage houses and not apartments, right? So it's a lot of questions. You got to be careful with the fees they charge you. They will nickel and dime you to death with their turn fees and this fee and that fee and this fee. And then you're like, why do I even have a management company? Like, they're making all the money, not me. So you just got to be careful with that. And also know this, if a management company sends you a contract, it's negotiable. It's 100% negotiable. And here's the beauty of it. If they don't want to negotiate the contract, there's other management companies.
Yeah. All over the place.
All over the place.
What are some of the fees? There's typically a percentage per month management fee.
So there's the number that most people know about, which is typically in the industry, it's 10%. Right. You can, if you got enough assets with a management company, they'll start dropping you down to 8%. But it's normally about 10% of collected rents. Now, you'll read the fine print in the contract, and it'll also say 10% of collected rents, deposits, security, and late fees. But in some cases, I've ran across some management companies that have in their agreement, you don't even get the late fees. And I'm like, wait a minute. This is my building. Yeah. They're late on my rent. Right? Like, no, I don't mind paying you a fee to collect it, but it's not your money. Right. And so you got to be careful about that. The other thing you have to be careful about is what we call turn fees. So on average, and they're all over the board, but on average, most of them, they do what's called they'll collect half of the first month rent to put a tenant in that property. And that half of that first month rent is justifiable because it's for their marketing costs, their admin costs. But if you're not careful, they leave that open-ended, which means they can charge that every time they put a tenant in your unit. So in some cases, management companies make more money on turn fees than they do on collecting the rent. So they may not put a qualified tenant in.
It doesn't incentivize them.
It does not incentivize them. Yeah. So I scratched through that on my agreements, and I put 1 year guarantee. So I don't mind giving you half the first month rent, but we're going to guarantee that for a year. So if you turn it 3 or 4 times, that's on you, not me. It's not on me. So qualify the tenant better.
And that's the thing I think that a lot of people that get into this business, they don't want to have to find tenants and background check and do the qualification. I always, when I was doing rental properties, I always thought it was money well spent.
100%.
Letting the management company do that
100%. If you get the right one. Right. And I've got right now, I've got one that handles a lot of my stuff here. I've got a few here, but one, she's really a rock star here. And I've got one company in Decatur that handles a lot of my apartments, and they're really good. Amazing. And I don't say that too frequently about management companies. So, but they've done really well for me over the years, and I don't ever have complaints. Where I've got some that, I hear you. I can't. But anyways, I won't ever self-manage a property, just FYI on that. So that's your management companies, appraisers, inspectors, handymans, contractors, lenders. And then you start getting into other aspects of it, which is knowing that there's all these little micro trades that you have to kind of have, right? Like you need a clean out crew. There's nothing greater than the world in calling a guy to come over with their trailer and say, hey, I just want it all cleaned out. And they go in, clean it all out, load it up, and take it off. Best money ever spent. And let me get a dumpster and let me find some labor. So you got to have a clean out guy all the time. That's part of our process. And then you got to have, lawn people. And then you got to have, and there's a lot of specialty things that you may not use all the time, like garage door people, shutter people, window people, door people, floor sanding
things,
people. But there again, that's where the contractor could step in and manage all that. But I'm here to say, like on little rentals, we don't need a contractor most of the time, right? And so if you was to just look at the core, that would be the core of the business, as in your team. That is the core, from your agent to your funders to your management companies to your contractors to, one I left out, insurance company.
Yeah.
Got to get an insurance company in place. And there's a great company out there, if they haven't looked into it yet, which is called National Real Estate Insurance Group, NREIG.
Okay.
By far, it's probably been the cheapest insurance I've ever found. About 2 years ago, I rolled my entire portfolio over to them. They won't do residential and they won't do commercial. So my guy over at Alpha, I give him all my commercial stuff. Check this out. I sent him that 8,000 square foot building. We got, I think, almost $800,000 in coverage. It was less than $2,000 a year.
Oh, wow. That's good. That's really good.
Can you repeat that?
Less than a roof.
I was like, can you repeat that again, Nathan?
Yeah.
But it was right. So it's having the right people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That don't just see you as, here's somebody, let me just throw a number at them. But they see you as a long-term client. And that's really what we're trying to develop, is that type of relationship.
Yeah. Let's talk about, really, we got just a couple of minutes left, but the process of finding these team. And you want to interview these folks.
Oh, absolutely.
You want to let them know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Short and long term, and how they can play.
And don't lie to them.
Right.
Like I even tell the people in my memberships and all that. I say, look, just tell them you're new.
Yeah.
Like just be honest with them, because they're going to figure it out if they've been in the business a little while, right? But to find them, you got to get around other people that are in it. Ask for referrals. Ask who they know. You need to connect in like a local club like ours, because they migrate to our club, like from bankers to lenders to contractors to handyman, you name it. I mean, they come to our club every single month because we're their targeted audience.
Yeah.
Because we do volume, right? And now, can they make more per job on a retail side? Yes, but they can build a more stable long-term business model working with investors. So it's getting around that, getting into networking events, seeing who's in the BNI. Really referral. But a lot of this stuff, you could go straight to Google and just start calling. You know what I mean? Yeah. But it is about not calling one. It's about calling 10, 15, 20 of them. Because here's why. I tell everybody, don't just go with somebody because you like their numbers. Go with somebody that communicates well with you. You're new. Okay, I understand. Like, here's some things you're going to need to look out for. But like, they're there you feel good when you're working with them.
Right. I would argue the last member of the team, and you touch on this, is your network. Yeah. Being around other people who are doing what you're doing.
That's a big part.
Yeah. So those referrals, they may have something they don't want that they can share with you
all the time.
Yeah. So
one of our teams that we build as investors is other wholesalers. Even though we might buy one out of every 100 houses we look at, but it's one. Yeah.
And another team. I know you don't like to push your services, but I think if you're new to this, a coach is a valuable team member.
I agree.
As a coach, you're going to agree.
I mean, I have saved so many students from going into deals that they were going to lose money on.
I've sent people to you.
Yeah.
Like, you need to go talk to Zach before you do something
It's just
silly.
they get emotional, you know what I mean? Or the biggest part that I think, because I started off with coaches. Look, I still have coaches. I'll have coaches for the rest of my life, I believe. But the reason I think it's so valuable is, one, it's so that you don't make a bunch of mistakes. But the other one is because they see what you can't see. Yeah. Where you're looking at a deal one way and be like, it's not a deal. Where if I look at it, I could say, well, if we do this, this, and this, and structure this, now we've got a real good deal. And they're like, I didn't see that.
Experience comes in real handy.
It really does when you've done thousands of transactions.
Right. Good deal.
So, yeah.
All right. So put the team together. It's very important. So great information. Where can folks get a hold of you if they want to learn more about what you do, the RIA, what's going on?
Man, the easiest way for them to do that, which I did for this whole thing, is just go to localinvestorclub.com. There's a free guide on there that walks you through what we've been talking about. Okay. And then that'll also give you ways to connect with our group and our Facebook and our meetings and all that. And our meetings are free, by the way. We do everything free.
They're a lot of fun. You usually have a good crowd.
Oh, yeah. 60 to 100 people every month.
Yeah. And that starting that networking, I think, is really important.
Very much.
All right, guys. So if you're interested in the Madison County area, we'll put the link below. We have Revolved Realty here, almost 100 agents now, ready to go to work for you. We do work with a lot of investors in state and out, and so we have a free call. What I do is I just get on the phone with these folks first, and then I match them with one of my agents that's a good fit.
That's perfect.
And so it works out really well. So anyway, we'll put all the links below. Next week, we're going to talk about who knows.
Well, we might be talking about how we find our leads.
How to find your leads, how to find deals, which I think is the hardest part of the whole process. So, all right.